I went to the ROTC both in high school and college. And the ROTC taught me to fire mortar shells or artillery shells, one shot over, one shot short, and then kapow. Well, I never shot any damn shells, but I've been using that mental trick all my life. That's how I determine what size to make something.
Under.
Over and under and kapow. And so I just got a bag of tricks. And I got the right bag of tricks early. And of course, it's been of enormous help to me. Let me give you an example. I had a client once when I was a young lawyer. And he owned a bunch of hilly ranch land on the edge of civilization, not very far from here in Southern California. And the Edison Company came through and they wanted a new easement through his land. They already had some easements. And he hired the leading appraiser in Orange County, real estate appraiser, and he had the idea that he should have $250,000 for this easement from the Edison Company. And this leading appraiser, who was very pompous and very old and very distinguished, and he told him, no, I'm sorry, it's only $125,000 value in your damn ranch. And so he came to me and said, Charlie, can you talk some sense into this elderly appraiser? And so I looked at his problem, and I believe what I thought how he was doing his own appraisal wrong. I'm not a real estate appraiser, he is. And what he had done is what he was taught to do in appraisal school. He thought the problems were in two dimensions, and he figured out from comparable sales what the value per acre was, and he computed the acreage, and he had something a little bit on the damage the easement would do to the remaining property and so, but it's all done in two dimensions. And I said to this appraiser, you've got to do this in three dimensions. You know, God gave us three dimensions. And I said, if they put the utility towers, big transmission line towers, which is why it's going to freeze the grade. And the logical way to develop your land is to lop off the top of the hills and put them in the valley. That's the way Kelly land is developed. And they're doing enormous damage to you by freezing the grade. And he said he wouldn't change a damn thing. So I said to my elderly client, I think you have to fire this twit, and I will hire you an appraiser who can think. And so I got him $600,000, which was all hard because I was dealing with a bunch of honest engineers at the Edison who did think in three dimensions. But again, that's so simple, but you'd be surprised how many lawyers would screw that one up. And of course, people like that appraiser who didn't know his own business very well because he didn't pay attention to the fundamentals, those people are always with us. And if you just have the mental trick of constantly going back to the basic, it's pretty basic insight. And I revolve possibilities and I rag problems hard. And if they don't yield, I come back. And so this is just a bag of tricks, and it enables a non-prodigious man to get prodigious results. Warren and I have been together so long that just one grunt we can speak a volume. And no, it's perfectly obvious the Permian Basin is our #1 oil reservoir, and we don't have another like it. And it's perfectly obvious you have a preferred stock, that you have an advantage over everybody else, and plus an upside. And we've done this kind of thing before too, so of course we did it. And it's not very difficult. But there are all kinds of endless due diligence. We knew enough to act. You don't need perfect. If you're 96% sure, that's all you're entitled to in many cases. I see these people doing this due diligence, and the weaker they are as thinkers, the more due diligence they do. And of course, it's just a way of allaying an inner insecurity. And of course, it doesn't work. You've got to be able to quickly understand it. How much brains does it take to know the Permian Basin is America's best oil reserve? It's layer after layer after layer. There is nothing like comparable. And if you have an 8% dividend off the top, if from a perfectly reputable place of very talented people, the woman who runs that is a production engineer. She's good. And they get better results in that shale than other people. So it's a no-brainer. At least it's a no-brainer if you don't make it hard. But I see people, in America now, they do these leverage buyouts, and these firms do what they call due diligence. And they will send armies of young lawyers out at high rates per hour to riffle through all the purchasing order at a place like Esri. I don't think people are that insecure mentally ought to be in positions of decision-making power.
So what specific advice, functional advice, would you give to that demographic of folk who are looking to better their lives?
I don't think you can just give advice to the young and just have it automatically sprout like Jack's beanstalk. A lot of people are just natural non-sprouters. And so my technique is to find the people who have the sprouting and then fertilize them greatly. And he says, we make silk purses out of silk. That's our system. We don't know how to turn. Now, I can turn any silk into a better purse if they'll learn my tricks. But what I found there is that they either get it quickly, almost instantly, or I never get through. I don't know what Jack's experience is, but I have all kinds of, they're nice people. Their thoughts are already there. The thoughts they already have displayed. I actually go through my best loved ideas occasionally. See, we had an executive at Berkshire who was a wonderful human being and terribly good at what he does. He was an actuary. And he was a member of our inner council, and he was with us, and we knew his wife and children, and we loved the guy, and he got a nasty cancer and was dying slowly. And we just left him there, dying and failing. And the reinsurance contracts he signed during those last 2 or 3 weeks were awful. It was a mistake. I've never done it again. It's natural to love your friend so much. And it's hard to come down on a close friend. And, that happened to Lee Kuan Yew, this guy I admire so, ran Singapore for so many decades. And his best friend had committed some moral act and immoral act, and it had come to life, and he committed suicide. And the wife came to a close friend and said, Chinese culture, it's a deep shame to commit suicide. I've got a friend who's the widow of the last surviving grandchild of Doheny, major California oilman of a former era. But it's in Santa Barbara, the ultimate NIMBYism. And she's got an 1,800-acre ranch with 2 miles of frontage on the ocean, no wind, perfect climate, great views, avocado trees. It has a private lake. It's like you can't believe it. And she can't sell it to anybody because nobody in Santa Barbara is going to be fair enough to allow her to do anything with her own property. And she really needed to sell. And so I said, Topsy, I'll give the university $70 million and it will buy the ranch with my $70 million. Well, I knew that the university's not subject to the damn Santa Barbara zoning rules. And so I had suddenly transformed $70 million into $1 billion worth of property in about 2 seconds. Now, I didn't get the billion, the university did, but I like helping the university. And particularly when I can get $1 billion worth of value for $70 million plus a little horse sense. And so, it'll be faculty and graduate students, yeah. And it's more extreme than that. I just got approved last week by the subcommittee of the Regents to build a dormitory for undergraduates. In this case, I'm going to give them 20% of the money, and they're going to borrow the rest, the 3% or something like that. But this housing is going to put 5,000 students on 5 acres, and the housing will be the best of its kind in the world. Well, how in the hell can some 95-year-old guy who doesn't know anything to speak of about housing suddenly be right when he says we'll put 5,000 people on 5 acres and it'll be the best housing in the world? Well, but I've built other housing. I'm not quite as ignorant as I look. And I realized that all I had to do was to make a big square building, which is 10 stories high, and devote the top story to being a sort of an art town in the sky with great views, looking out at the world with high ceilings and so forth. And then adopt ship architecture for the rest of the thing and build it out of precast concrete for the first 7 floors on a poured concrete foundation, and then build the top floor out of Butler steel components, which is what Costco uses to build its stores wherever it is allowed to do it. And when I work that out, it works like gangbusters. It can't possibly. I've already done every trick in this building. I've already done somewhere else. I just assembled a trick out of a bag of tools. It sounds ridiculous.